The dark side, beyond the wrestling ring. A shocking murder-suicide.
How did we know that Chris Benoit would turn into a monster?
Pro wrestlers dying young, and allegations of drug abuse.
The steroids started, the drugs started, prescription drugs, because of the injuries.
I'm glad that the WWE has taken the steps it has to clean up our industry.
Is the WWE steroid-free, drug-free?
Finally, Chris Benoit has become the heavyweight champion of this world.
In the fall of 2005, following the year he wore the championship belt, professional wrestler Chris Benoit was at the top of his game. In the ring, with the body of an Adonis, he was slamming opponents, being slammed, and putting on a show. Outside the ring, the former WWE World Wrestling Entertainment Champion was quietly spinning into depression and, in a sense, documenting his own mental breakdown.
This is an open letter to Eddie on November 24th, 2005.
Mike Benoit is reading the diary his son wrote over an 11-day period in 2005. The diary consists of rambling letters to his best friend, a wrestler named Eddie Guerrero. The first entry, the first note to Eddie, was written on November 23rd, 10 days after his 38-year-old friend dropped dead of a heart attack.
Oh, Eddie, I forgot to tell you about my dream last night. I dreamt that both my parents were perished.
Mike Benoit believes it's the diary of his son going mad.
And Nancy and I were trying to get to her parents in Daytona to save them because we felt that they were being taken next. And these people after them were very powerful people, high-ranking people. When we got to Daytona, it was too late. Her parents were gone too, perished. We just didn't understand this was going on at that time in Chris's life.
"19 months later, during the weekend of June 22nd, Chris Benoit would suffocate his wife Nancy, their 7-year-old son Daniel, then would walk into the basement of his suburban Atlanta home and hang himself. He was 40. The diary was found outside in the trash by a neighbor. No one saw it coming. Not his fellow wrestlers, not WWE boss Vince McMahon, and not his parents.
I would have set my son in a totally different direction. I realized I do feel some responsibility for what has taken place here.
Because you encouraged his drink?
Yes, I did.
And this is the dream. To be at the top, to be adored or hated by millions of fans.
Coming 55.
About 16 million people a week tune into the WWE. 2 of their cable programs, Raw and Friday Night SmackDown, are weekly ratings giants. WWE pay-per-view specials generate an average of $100 million per year. The action is fake, the pain is real. The grind never ends. And that's the dark side of wrestling entertainment when many turn to painkillers and steroids. And that combination has fed a numbing statistic.
Their death rate was approximately 7 times greater than that age group in the general population.
Dr. Keith Pinkard studied wrestling deaths over a 20-year span from 1983 to 2003. He found 64 professional wrestlers, all just 40 years old and younger, had died. A CNN tabulation shows in just the past 5 years, 18 wrestlers under the age of 50 have died. Pinkert, a medical examiner in Dallas, did his own analysis and was astounded.
About a fifth of those were drug-related deaths, either accidental overdoses or suicidal overdoses.
Each one of these professional wrestlers died of a drug overdose, a heart attack, or like Chris Benoit, committed suicide.
I beat Chris Benoit for a title on pay-per-view once. You know, that's a bond me and Chris had.
Chris Kanyon is one of those wrestlers who calls himself a survivor. He faced Benoit a number of times in the ring and faced the same personal demons.
September 14, 2003, I took 50 sleeping pills and tried to kill myself. So I could be another one of those statistics. I very well could have been.
Even Benoit, who once wore the championship belt, had he not killed his family, his suicide alone might have gone virtually unnoticed. But that spectacular crime has now gotten the attention of Congress and the public, and is again turning up the heat on the man who sits atop the world of professional wrestling. Vince McMahon is chairman of World Wrestling Entertainment. His wife Linda is the CEO. Together, they are the business of professional wrestling.
Nothing from the WWE, under any set of circumstances, had anything at all to do with Chris Benoit murdering his family. How did we know that Chris Benoit would turn into a monster?
In this hour, you will see the real side of fake wrestling. The ringmaster again under fire, performers who pump their bodies with drugs, and a mother who considered killing herself and her 2 children to escape life in the ring.
And the only reason I didn't do it is because I couldn't guarantee that we would all die.
At first, there was the special tribute. On June 25, 2007, Vince McMahon and superstars like Phil CM Punk Brooks remembering a champion, Chris Benoit.
Last night I felt really overwhelmingly disappointed because I didn't get to wrestle Chris Benoit. I just can't get that out of my head because Chris Benoit was my hero.
Just one day later,
tonight investigators are calling the horrific scene that they found inside this home a murder-suicide.
CM Punk's hero had become a villain, and Vince McMahon and his wrestling empire were on the defensive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Last night on Monday Night Raw, the WWE presented a special tribute show, recognizing the career of Chris Benoit. However, now some 26 hours later, the facts of this horrific tragedy are now apparent.
The Benoit tragedy put McMahon and his WWE back under the microscope. Another dead wrestler, allegations of steroid and drug abuse. Nothing new for McMahon, a bodybuilder and promoter who many say single-handedly changed the shape of wrestling.
Vince has changed this business more than anybody. He has had an unbelievable influence on this business. A lot of it good, some of it not so good. Obviously, that look came from a lot of drugs, a lot of steroids.
Del Wilkes wrestled for McMahon and his former World Wrestling Federation as the Patriot. He says he was injured in the ring, became addicted to painkillers, and ultimately spent time in prison.
The WWF was known as the company of big guys. Vince liked big guys, and they were all there.
You had certain wrestlers who...
A former longtime WWE employee who asked us not to reveal his identity goes further, charging that McMahon not only changed the wrestlers, he also changed wrestling's legion of fans.
You look at pictures of wrestlers before the mid to late 80s, they don't look like bodybuilders. They look like your unemployed uncle sitting on the couch. That's what they look like. They're not jacked up guys. But now there's an expectation among fans that a wrestler has to look a certain way.
As the wrestlers grew, so did the whispers of illegal steroid use. Those whispers turned into headlines when McMahon went on trial in 1994, charged by the federal government with distributing steroids to his wrestlers. The government star witness? McMahon's own, Hulk Hogan. Perhaps the most famous name in all of wrestling. Hogan, whose real name is Terry Bollea, admitted under oath that he had used steroids. He estimated as many as 80% of McMahon's wrestlers were using steroids.
Terry!
Hogan also testified McMahon knew his wrestlers were on the juice and said that McMahon had ordered steroids for his own use. Despite such damning testimony, McMahon was acquitted, but the trial did lead him to admit to steroid use. The government's long investigation had already led to him announcing an expansion of the drug testing policy for his wrestlers. McMahon tried to assure fans and critics he was serious, saying, "It should come as no surprise to you that the WWF has one of the most comprehensive drug testing education and rehabilitation programs in all of sports." The trial, the scrutiny, and defections to McMahon's biggest rival, the WCW, World Championship Wrestling, led to a downturn in McMahon's fortunes. Eric Bischoff ran WCW for McMahon's arch-nemesis, Ted Turner, who at the time also owned CNN.
WCW really dominated the sports entertainment category from probably about 1996 through effectively the first part or the middle of 1998. We were still very, very competitive. If not number one, we're close to it.
The WCW and the WWF battled throughout the 90s, and both Turner and McMahon's organizations were dogged by allegations of steroid abuse. It was McMahon, however, who eventually won out. He bought the WCW in 2001, rolled it into his entertainment empire, and became the final word.
Yeah, the WWE has, they're the last man standing in the world of professional wrestling.
Vince McMahon now lorded over all of wrestling, its profits and its pitfalls.
Steroids, human growth hormones, and the quest for bigger people in this industry. You like big guys, right?
Well, again, I take exception to the fact that, our locker room now in terms of weight as far as big guys are concerned is lighter than it's ever been in history. There's an expression in our business that here's where you make your money. It's your face. It's what you do with it.
McMahon protests, but there's no denying the massive, chiseled, almost unbelievable physiques of many wrestlers, and McMahon's eagerness to promote this look. Irv Muchnick, nephew of legendary wrestling promoter Sam Muchnick, is the author of Wrestling Babylon.
Wrestlers see what works for other wrestlers and they copy it. There are only a handful of really top slots where you make huge money. So much money that you can really take care of your family and really take care of your health and really prepare for your retirement.
Still, the debate over steroids and its impact on who gets to the top divides the wrestling community.
It's pretty obvious. You can sit down and watch the show and at least decide at least a percentage of who's on and who's not.
Former WWE champ Chris Jericho says you can